Let's talk about the fact that this weekend was one of the greatest fight sports weekends in history.
Yeah.
Errol Spence Jr., Terence Bud Crawford fight for the unified 147-pound championship.
Yeah.
Bud just outclasses.
I mean, yeah, dude. I was rooting for Spence. He's a Dallas guy.
Yeah.
I ordered the fight. I'm watching just knockdown after knockdown. I'm like, what the fuck is it? People say this is one of the greatest matchups ever.
If you want to look at...
Both undefeated.
Yeah, both undefeated, both incredibly dominant in their careers. But if you want to look at actual elite boxing skill, you're not going to find another fight like this. I mean, there's only few in history where both are elite fighters and tons of action. That's the thing that happens in a lot of when elite fighters fight each other. A lot of times it's not a lot of action because both are so good. They're canceling out each of their advantages. And it's like, okay, maybe you're going to get some strikes, maybe you're going to get some touches, but it can be boring. This was two guys that were said, I'm going to go after it. I am not running. I'm not taking a step back. To Errol Spence Jr.'s credit, he was game till they stopped that fight.
Yeah.
He had no quit in him. Bro. That guy is a fucking dog. Like, say whatever you want about him getting beat, and he got beat convincingly. He has fucking heart, bro. Yeah. He was going after it, and he made that fight interesting because it's easy to step back and go, okay, I'm gonna try to stick and use the jab, get on my bicycle, move away, not let this guy touch me because he was getting outboxed. But he's like, no, I'm a dog. I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna throw these body shots. If I get caught, I get caught, and he did. And then there's Bud Crawford, and all the credit to Bud, man. That was an unbelievable performance. Elite boxing, never off balance, not for a second. Every punch he threw, he was completely on balance. Every time that he swung, he was within range. His defense was impeccable. I mean, this was one of the most glorious boxing performances I've ever seen in my entire life. I've been watching boxing since I'm a kid. This man, it felt like I was watching Floyd. Like, it was just stylistically different, but the balance. You never see Floyd off balance.
Yeah.
And you never saw Bud reaching too far. Yeah. You never saw his ability to throw with power. Every single time, the jab, snapping. Yeah. One of those guys who's he's a natural right-handed dude, but he fights southpaw. So his strong hands in his front. Oscar De La Hoya is one of these guys that is, great. But his pop in the jab and his counters and always on balance.
Crazy.
It was just beautiful. This was like immaculate boxing. If there was a way to get people excited about boxing again, it was watching this fight. And it was so interesting because we were watching it at the casino in AC after the show, and thank you so much everybody who came out to the show, man. That was awesome. You were watching at the sport book, and you had the UFC fight on, and you had the boxing match
you
on.
get to watch both. That's great.
And you saw the energy completely shift once the final card came on for boxing.
Yeah.
Once Errol Spence and Bud Crawford were fighting, the energy of the whole sports book was about the boxing match.
Yeah.
Every fight before that in boxing, nobody gave a fuck about. Like, nobody gave a fuck. It was all about the UFC. I mean, one of the things that, and Vala pointed this out, that like UFC really exposed, especially when we were watching them side to side, is that when we were watching the Pitbull Cruz fight, which was on the undercard, right? Yeah. Shout out to Pitbull Cruz, he's an excellent fighter. That fight went 12 rounds. 3 different UFC fights happened within that 12-round fight, and each of them were like ended in devastating fashion and exciting. It was like, we just got 3 for the price of 1.
Yeah.
But in terms of enjoyment, we got 20x enjoyment.
Yeah.
Nobody even was looking at the boxing or even cheering for the boxing. Nothing. And it was just, UFC is such, especially on the undercards, an unbelievably engaging sport. You can't look away.
Yeah.
Boxing is only engaging at the most elite.
Yeah.
Even when you watch the younger guys that are just going to dominate and knock the other guy out, it's boring. It's boring. It's too one-sided and it's whack. When you see that high-level chess match, when you saw what happened with Spence and Crawford, that is elite entertainment. And that's what the UFC can do. The UFC can match up fighters that are on equal levels and create interesting fights. With boxing, since they're not all owned by the same promoter or contracted by the same promoter, they can't risk it. You've got a young, talented fighter. You can't risk them taking a loss. So you put them up against Tomato Can for 20 fights. And then at the end of their career, Bud is 35. Errol's 33. Like, this is old for boxing. Then they fight. If this was UFC, they would have fought 3 times by now before they're 30 years old. So you seeing them side by side really exposes the advantages that the UFC has.
Yeah.
But I will say, technical elite boxing is
Nothing's like it.
so entertaining.
It is so.
This was the first boxing match that I watched. I was like, oh, this is like at the time more entertaining than any of the UFC fights.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and there's also an interesting racial divide that happens because the second that boxing match was over, every black person left the sports book. Every single black person left the sports book.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And so black people and Latinos, but Latinos also like the UFC, but black people specifically are holding down boxing.
Yeah.
And that's why you see the biggest fights are when you have black Javonte Davis, Bud Crawford, Errol Spence, or Latino, like who's the guy that Javonte just beats?
Ryan Garcia.
Ryan Garcia. Like, they are really holding boxing together. But in terms of like white people in America, they've really kind of shifted over to UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It feels like that.
Is it because they're not as
On
good?
a casual level, sorry. On a casual, the casual fan,
Yeah.
the white casual used to be a white casual boxing fan.
Yeah.
Now they're a white casual.
Is it because they're not dominating boxing at all? Like they're
the whites?
Yeah, they don't have. They got Tyson Fury, but I don't know any other white boxers.
My boy, whites haven't dominated boxing in about 200.
But now they got an alternative. Now they got UFC where it's like, oh, we're still dominating.
Seeing
that.
yourself be reflected is always better. Jeremy Lin for boxing.
I mean, it's just like a cultural
hard
thing
not
too.
to.
Like if you don't hang out with a lot of black people, you might not know that there's a boxing fight happening.
And
I
also
had no idea
the
that
culture
was-
that you're like intertwined with, like if you're like a white dude, right, who is into fitness and you're listening to the most popular podcast ever, Joe Rogan, you're hearing him talk about high level UFC fights and you're seeing it like permeate the culture that is outside of just boxing, but just comedy culture, podcasting culture. Like think about how much UFC talk there is across comedy podcasts.
Yeah.
There's not as much boxing and there's not as many boxers that are coming in and like blending and seeing that. Like we should have Bud Crawford. Bud should be here right now. And they should see the value too. Like we should have Javonte. Like their managers should be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
There's been so many UFC fighters that have been built up through podcasting and through these types of experience. Get them on Rogan, get them on Flagrant, get them on these podcasts that can blow it up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Why do you think Crawford was so dominant? I'm curious.
Balance. His balance and timing. I think he's a harder puncher and he's a faster puncher than Spence. And Spence has this like really beautiful, relentless pressure that he works behind the jab. And he's really interesting fighter. It's all working behind the jab and he does this great body work. But he couldn't get Crawford off balance. And Crawford was faster to the punch. So like, when he would try to work him, he couldn't effectively get inside because Crawford was catching him as he was trying to come in. So it was costly to come in. And his hands, Errol Spence's hands weren't heavy enough to get Crawford to go, I got to cover up.
Yeah, I think that's what made this. I think power made the
And
difference.
nobody thought that was going to be the case.
Yeah.
Crawford's coming up from 135. Spence should probably be at 154 by now. He's a big guy. But for whatever reason.
But I heard Crawford pretty much walks around at his fighting weight. And I think that's going to be, like, fighters are going to start saying, like, hey, if
There's advantages in
Yeah.
that.
That's what Floyd did.
If you
right?
don't have to cut like that, like, you're way stronger. And you probably
it's
in better
debatable
condition.
though, because you earlier in your career when you can lose the weight and then recover, you want to do that because you're just so much more powerful. You're adding 20 pounds of power on a punch if you can add that the next day. What you lose sometimes is your chin. Somebody was breaking this down on the podcast, but they were talking about like there's a liquid barrier between your brain and your skull.
Blood-brain
Blood-brain barrier, but I think there's also some like actual water and fluid that's in that. So the more dehydrated you are, the easier you are to knock out because you just don't have as much of that hydration separating your skull from your brain. That's what the guy said. I don't know how much truth is here, but they do say that you can be a little bit what's called chinny if you're really, really dehydrated. But you have an advantage in power if you can come down.
I think if they can, from all combat sports, they should remove like the cutting weight.
That would be great.
I think they should.
And the thing that you notice with Crawford is it wasn't one punch that was hurting him. It was the combination of punches, right? It was like every time he could get up, Errol could get up.
Yeah.
but he just was going to keep getting battered.
Yeah.
Did you think there was anything wrong with Errol? Because that's what I'm seeing. You think that's just selling a rematch?
Maybe. I just, from what I saw, Errol's power wasn't significant enough to make Crawford question his decisions when he countered.
Yeah. Even when he got touched, it would just like snap him and he was back. Like he never got wobbled. He never got disoriented at all.
Yeah. Because if you're a counterpuncher and you're not really worried about getting hurt, you can start taking some risks.
Yeah.
You can sit in the pocket. You can throw. Like there's that great moment where Crawford knocked Spence down with an uppercut on the inside. So Spence was trying to crowd him. Remember that? And then he throws it. You're only throwing a front hand uppercut against a fighter that has been throwing looping left hands. If you're confident that if that left hand lands, you can take it.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous shot. You're throwing a looping left hand. So that means this hand is coming over the top.
Yeah.
Completely open. You're only throwing that if you're like, I think I can handle that power.
Take a couple of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it looked like. I mean, both of them, to Spence's credit, but like both of them were staying close.
Yeah.
And, like the proximity was right there.
It was beautiful, man. Like, it was beautiful to see like two dogs, like both of them dogs.
He stuck it out more rounds than I thought. I'll be honest. Like after the fourth or fifth, I was like,
you could stop
and
it.
how many rounds did it go? 8?
I think 8.
Yeah.
It just kept coming forward, man. Like,
That's
so
impressive.
much respect.
I remember watching the 5th round being like, what do you do? Like
Yeah.
you're getting like touched way more. You can't, like, even when you're connecting, it's not actually shaking him.
Yeah.
And, like that must be such a debilitating position to be in mentally.
Yeah.
The doctor's coming out, fucking checking you, and you're like,
Yeah.
like the mental roadblock to get through 3 more rounds of that is
Oh,
phenomenal.
100%. Imagine that. The doctor comes in and says, are you okay in front of 20,000 people?
Oh yeah.
But 20,000.
Yeah, defeated
Millions,
that.
bro.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Other people at home, too.
Crazy.
But both of them are going to make life-changing money, as they deserve. Bud is going to get the credit that he deserves for the type of boxer and the level of boxer he is. Like, a lot of great things come from this.
Yeah.
If they fight again, cool. If not, there are tons of interesting fights for Errol. You know what I mean? Like, Errol fighting Ryan Garcia, both coming off a loss.
Yeah, that's
both big
interesting.
names.
Bud has nobody to fight now, though.
Javonte. Now, I don't think Javonte will come up,
He's not gonna come up.
but that is what people would love to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even think Javonte should come up. I think Javonte probably naturally is a 135er.
Yeah.
So he's already coming up to 140. But like there are people. There's the Charlo brother, who's I think at 154 and 160, but maybe they could find a catch weight. Like there's some names out there.
What does Crawford normally fight at?
147.
Okay.
What about Devin Haney?
Haney's 140.
How about Shakur Stevenson? I've heard.
Yeah, Shakur Stevenson I think is 140 as well. But I think they're like I think that's his mentor. Like Shakur's
okay.
mentor is Bud. Like,
I obviously don't know much, but Matt McCoy, our friend comedian who boxes, was like, yo, Shakur, that guy could be, he's got the potential to be the best ever.
Yeah, there's a guy named Boots Ennis who had a great outing that he might. There's a lot of guys in that weight class that could be really fun, interesting fights. But
Yeah. Cool. How much credit do you give Eminem for the win?
all credit goes to Eminem.
All credit.
Dude, honestly,
I thought he was gonna lose once I saw him walking out with Eminem. I was like, oh, it's
Picking a white guy for boxing. Is bold.
Yeah, I know,
That's a
like-
confident move.
bro, it was brilliant though because Eminem is arguably the biggest superstar in the history of rap
In his day, yeah.
in any day. Like there isn't one since that's reached
Oh, yeah,
that.
I'm saying his peak versus anybody else's peak was
Yeah,
nuts.
that's what I'm saying. Like, so you have the biggest superstar in the history of rap walking you out, right? Now this doesn't feel like, oh, this is a specific cultural demographic of boxing and black people that know about this. It goes, all the white people that didn't know who Bud Crawford was or like maybe fringe knew, see Eminem walking out and they're like, oh, this must have been a big fight. I missed this fucking fight.
Yeah. If this is big enough for Eminem to be there, like, why did I
Eminem's
know
never
about this?
walked out anybody.
Yeah.
It's like Jay-Z walking out somebody.
Yeah.
You'd be like, what the fuck?
Oh, this is a big deal.
Bro, if Jay-Z walked out Dustin Poirier or something, what would black people think about that UFC
Oh,
fight?
that's our guy. Yeah. That's our guy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, what a great strategic move right there.
You know, it wasn't even strategic. He just went on Twitter like a couple days before. He's like, "Who wants to walk me out?"
Yeah.
And Eminem replied to
Yeah.
it. That's
that's
exactly
amazing.
how it happened.
And how cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.